Hi, and welcome to Author Conversations. I'm Chris Dabbs, and today we're joined by the author of Owned by the Streets, Mark Sacco. Now, Mark has got some really good heritage, I think, that he's brought into this whole story. And I tell you what, let's just get straight into it and find out about your story and inspiration, Mark. What inspired you to write Owned by the Streets in the first place?
Well, what inspired me was the way life used to be. Good work ethics, um, family, the most important thing, a handshake. I was brought up in the 70s, and the 70s still had some grip on the 50s, which that's what the book is about in the 50s. And it always comes back to me. And it has inspired me to write a story about the way life used to be.
What? So, okay, so how life used to be as opposed to in the 70s, or as opposed to how it is now, or just sort of writing something that just kind of told the story in the 50s so that we could all reminisce with it. Does that make sense? Is that what you mean?
Yes, that does make sense. Yeah, I didn't want to get confused with the 70s and the 50s. I just wanted to bring up the point where the way when I was brought up in the 70s, still remember family that was so important. I'm Italian, so it was like every Sunday it was the same thing. Family gatherings it was all from the heart. And I wanted to bring that. I wanted you can't bring back the past. I mean, I wish they made a time machine that you could, but you can't go. You all you could do is think about it, remember it, and I wanted to put it on paper, and it just turned out to be a good story, and it inspired me. The more I wrote it about those true values, the more I wrote it, the more it became, half and half, where it was I mean, it is fiction, but part of it is the way life used to be.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as well, based in the States, right? You can tell us where it's all based and everything else in a sec, but I kind of agree. I think it looks like, I mean, I was brought up in that time period too. And I think it's quite interesting, really, because I always look at that as the 50s as being like the golden era, I think. And a lot of other people think that too, don't they, of America in the 50s. So, it's not, I guess it's not just about the family, even though that is a big thing. My wife's Italian, so I know all about that, right? So, it's quite interesting. And I agree. I think the 50s, I'd love to have lived in the States in the 50s at the time. So tell us a bit more about where it's set and what's going on and why you chose, the Italian Mafia as the setting for the novel.
Well, it takes place in Little Italy, New York, on Mulberry Street. I I visited Mulberry Street many a times when they had the San Gennaro feast, and I was there at Umberto's Clam House, and I visited that area. Not recently, but it's sort of like it was compatible to where I was brought up. I was brought up in Hoboken, New Jersey, and Hoboken was very family oriented. Everybody looked out for each other, which is part of where what inspired me. And Mulberry Street is, like I said, it's sort of like where I grew up. So I didn't want to pick Hoboken because I think it would have brought in too much of my life. So that's why I picked New York, Mulberry Street, and like you said a few minutes ago, the 1950s were from the research that I've done, the 1950s were great years. They were years of a good life. Mothers were happy, wives were happy. There was new things happening, new technology. Men had good jobs. There was no war. It was just good to fit. So I guess that's really why I picked the 50s.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's right. And it's funny, obviously, where you come from now is pretty famous, isn't it? So, you've got that cake guy. what's his name? Whatever his name is, Cake
Oh, the
Boss.
guy is it's as a matter of fact, it's a funny story. I don't want to get into the whole story, but when I used to peddle produce with my father in Hoboken. And that was a little similarity in that was in my book. Frank Gevono, the main character, he peddled fish with his father, but his father passed away when he was very young. But anyway, fast forward, when I used to peddle with my father in one of the streets in Hoboken, the cake boss, he was Carlos was the original Carlos was right in front of where me and my father used to peddle. And I remember the cake boss. He was my age. I think he was a little bit younger than me, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember him coming in and out of the store with his father. So it was, kind of ironic that you just mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I mean, I was on holiday on a cruise not too long ago, and we met this couple from Hoboken as well, and it's amazing. Yeah, you guys get around. I thought it was everyone from New Jersey that got around, but nope, it's you guys now. Oh, is it New Jersey though, right? Or not?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, all right. Well, let's leave that because our listeners are going, why is this English guy going on about this? Right. But anyway, so apart from, obviously the Hoboken stories and all of these sorts of things, and you're growing up and seeing, I mean, peddling around to restaurants or shops, stores, whatever. I mean, there must have been some real life experiences or historical influences or even classic mafia stories that helped you to write the book. I mean, tell us about those.
Yes. That I'm glad that you brought that point up because I was I learned to be street smart at a very, very young age.
I bet.
And the main reason why was because I was working for my father. I started with my father at, I think it was somewhere around 9 or 10 years old. And he he went back, he was in produce all his life. He went in the army, he came back, he didn't go back into produce right away. But when he did in 1971, that's when I started helping him out on weekends. And it was so those memories, I think, brought me to where I am today. Meaning, when I was with him and people used to come up to the truck, people he knew or just regular customers, the way he presented himself and the conversations that they had, I used to just stop and listen. And I learned a lot. And there were the majority of the time, a lot of his friends would come up to the truck, just talk to him a little bit. And he would say to me when they left, he would either say, "Gotta watch out for that guy," or "That's a good guy. He's stand up," or "That guy's honest." And I just, as the years went on, I just learned more and more and more. And I grew up very, very fast.
I bet. I bet. But did you know what though? That's a great thing, isn't it? That's a, if I think as parents, if we can pass that on, being
It's,
street smart, yeah,
it's,
that's what we
it,
want, isn't it?
oh yeah. I mean, I wish there was a school today that you could go and enroll for street smart, but
Mm.
there's not. It's all about experience. That's what it is.
No, that's very true. And do you think that's one of the reasons why you wanted to go back to the 50s with this, as opposed to like present day but I know it's different nowadays, of course, because you haven't got the sort of main mafia sort of influence, I guess. It's not as open, is it? But do you think that's one of the reasons?
Yes, that's one of the main reasons.
Mm, interesting. Okay. So how would you describe Frank Giovanno? Is it Giovanno or Giovanno, really? Uh,
If I'm-
Giovanno. Right. At the beginning of the story, then, how would you describe Frank? I mean, what's he about?
He is his life at the beginning is very humdrum. It's very boring, and he feels that there's something missing. That he wakes up every day. He works for his uncle, and he just feels like he does the same thing every day, every day, every day. And he just feels in the back of his mind that there's something missing in his life, and he struggles with that because he knows the stability part of his life, which is, back then it was you would you would go with the neighborhood, meaning meaning the neighborhood or the streets kind of told you what you did. Um, Meaning if you had uncles or relatives that they came out of school or whatever, and they worked for the city, or they worked for as a clerk for one of the business owners, and it was all the same thing. But Frank didn't want that. He wanted something different, but he didn't know what it was until things started stirring in his life.
If that is interesting, isn't it? Because again, that's something that happens, isn't it? You know, like father to son passing on jobs or passing on opportunities or recommending the father, son, daughter, whatever for a role. That used to happen a lot, didn't it? And I think
Yes.
now, yeah, especially with what Teamsters and things like that, you know. And I think it's probably gone away as well now, hasn't it? And everyone has to make their own way in life, which is kind of good, but you know, equally, it means that those bonds break down. So I see what you mean. So talking about Frank then, I mean, he's obviously struggling with trying to find who he is, why he's there. He thinks he's bored, as I think is what you're saying, and he thinks there's more to it. So, what makes him want to get involved with organized crime? Then, you know, what's that about?
Well, he starts to see his uncle's store is on Mulberry Street, and across the street, diagonally, like because I could picture this in my head, is the social club, and the social club has the men there, and they're in and out of there every day. And it just so happened one day he started looking, and he started seeing the clothes, the cars, um, the way they presented themselves. He knew who they were and what they were about, but he never really looked and started visualizing himself in that life. And I think that was the moment where it clicked in his head. And he said to himself, maybe that life is not so bad.
Which is interesting in itself, isn't it? Because you know, getting into that without being introduced in some way or other, I guess by a father or something or an uncle, could be quite interesting, isn't it? Okay, so Frank obviously has got to go through life now, and I think that there's like an internal conflict, isn't there, that Frank's struggling with. Um, yeah, I couldn't really make out from the bits that I read what that was, but there's something really driving him, isn't there?
Yes. What's driving Frank is and it has to do with the things that he struggles with. What drives him to start this life is the main reason, and I believe this is sort of like the core of the story. It has to do with family, and he wants to. There was a paragraph or a couple of pages that I wrote that he asked his mother for something about dinner, or and she just said it was too expensive that week, and he broke down, and that was the moment where he said, I have to do something with this. We can't live in these railroad. Meanwhile, when I was a kid, not to jump back, but I was a kid, I lived in railroad rooms in Hoboken, and they were railroad. I don't know if you know what railroad rooms are. They're rooms that just it's straight ahead, and it's one room right after the other. There's no doors or anything like that. So he lived in this little apartment with his mother and his brother, and he knew that when his father passed away, that it was his responsibility to take care of his mother and his brother. And would then go back to what you were saying. He when he heard this from his mother, he was determined. He said, I got to make some money. And I know that the fastest way to do this is if I could get my foot in the door with this type of lifestyle. And he was that's where he started. He started where he wants to make a better life for his mother and his brother. And he comes next. He didn't put himself first. And that's another thing about Frank. He always has a reason for something. He's a reasonable guy. He's not naturally cold-hearted. He has a conscience, and he wants to make a better life for his mother and his brother.
Which is a nice thing actually, isn't it? I mean, that's at least as you say, there's a reason for it. There's some compassion there that he wants to push his family forward. And I can see how, if he hears his mother saying, "Sorry, we can't afford that son this week," it can affect you as a child, can't it? Especially if you know that you're going to be taking over the family kind of thing. So would you say that it's sorry, his mother rather, Frank's mother, had the greatest sort of impact on him over his life, or was there somebody else who's really sort of like acted as a mentor?
It's funny because that goes back again to his, not confusion, his struggle. It's the word I was looking for, easy word, but that's what goes back to his struggle. His mother and that life is his stability life. And then the other part of his life is where he wants to change it. And the love he has for his mother is unconditional. But she's not she has an impact on him in his stability part of his life, if you could understand that. The other part of his life, I think the man he works for and his best friend has a big impact on him. Now, the man he works for, the impact that he has on him is the way he dresses and the lifestyle he has, and mostly the power to do whatever he wants to do. And that takes money. And then the other impact on his life is his best friend. And he knows that his best friend will do anything for him. He knows that he's there for him. He'll take a bullet for him. Even though he argues with him once in a while, he needs him. He needs Angelo by his side because Angelo once in a while will tell him you're wrong or you're right, and he needs him. So I guess there's three people that impacted his life: his mother, of course, and then his best friend and the man that he starts working for.
So it shows you really that you think that family loyalty as well, right? His best friend and trusting in friends as well are really important. I mean, are there any sort of tests that Frank has to go through in terms of loyalty or anything that he puts his other people through, I guess, in the story?
Yeah, there's tests that he has to go through, mentally and physically. Mentally, with his struggle of deciding that this is the life that he wants. Physically, he has to go through a test with the man that he starts working for. And it's a when I was writing it, I didn't know how Frank would get into this lifestyle. And then it kind of like came together where there's a part of the book about how Joe, that's the man he works for, puts Frank through this test. So he's got a couple of different steps that he has to take and different things that he has to think about.
That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we haven't talked about romance either on Frank. I mean, because how do you sort of have romance if you're living in that sort of lifestyle? I mean, how does Frank deal with that then?
Well, he's got a little bit of a jump on it because the girl that he's involved with, they've known each other since I believe it was kindergarten. And they grew up right on the same street. And she works for her parents. So they kind of like have a lot of things in common, but they were always friends. They would always joke with each other, and as they were growing up, they would joke with each other. And then when they started becoming uh, a man and a woman, then that's where it started taking a little bit of a hold. So it's not like where he got into the life and then he meets a woman or a girl or whatever, and he's got to start this. Okay, how am I going to do this? He already had a foundation with Maria, and it just escalates from there.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so she kind of obviously if they're childhood friends, and yeah, that does help, right? Because she knows what he's up to, I guess. Mm,
She she has an idea, and she always kind of like innuendo, throws little hints out there and asks questions. And by the middle of the story, Frank's starting to get irritated by this because he doesn't want her to know exactly what he's doing. And that's another struggle that he has because Maria is that other part. She's that part of his of stability. So it's a very fine line where he can't he don't know whether he should cross over and tell her everything or whether he should just keep it the way it is for now.
that would be quite a truth bomb, wouldn't it? I guess if she doesn't really know what's going on. But even if she did, I don't know how that would work. I mean, the violence and the danger that Frank has to deal with, like, all the time in that, doing that sort of thing. I mean, how does he deal with that, like, emotionally? The violence, that can't be simple, can it? And the danger of having that violence kind of done to him as well. I mean, how does he deal with it?
He deals with it with his street smart. He deals with it with strategy. He thinks first before he acts. And it works because jumping into something without thinking, which I've learned in life, is very, very bad. It knocks you off course. If you do things on a spur of the moment, sometimes it's good, I guess personally, or maybe for fun. But as far as something that's very important in life, you have to think about it. You have to sit down and weigh out your options. And that's what he does. And as far as the violence part of it, he deals with it in a sense of um, justification. He tries to justify what he's going to do. And like I said, he's not a natural born cold hearted killer. He's just a young man that's getting into this life and once he's in it now he can't get out of it. But he wants to keep that other part of his life inside of him. And I think that's what he consciously what he keeps in his head. He keeps that his old life in his head, and that part holds him back from doing something that is not his nature.
That's interesting, isn't it? That he can sort of like compartmentalize it, and he's got like a, I guess in that case, like an angel that you used to see in the Looney Tunes or something like that on your shoulder,
On your shoulder. Yes.
yeah, yeah, like a conscience, I guess, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah, wow, amazing,
It's
amazing.
like Chris, it's like I mean, I've read this book, I don't know how many times. And there's some things I would have changed but I like it the way it is. But what's funny is the more I read it, the more I feel that Frank is living two lives and something's got to change. And it does. Not in this book, but it does.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Actually, thinking about living two lives, because I hear that quite a lot, actually. I think that we're kind of guilty of doing that sort of thing ourselves without even realizing it, right? Work life, home life, sports life, all these different lives, right, that don't mix. So, I mean, trying to figure out all of this because it's not just a sort of like a bank robbery kind of or whatever heist, thing, book where it's just like goes in, gets some money, gets caught, goes to prison, whatever else, right? It's quite challenging to think about all these things in the background, right? So, what was the most challenging part of writing this novel for you?
To try to keep, I mean, it was challenging from the beginning, but then towards the end, it got easy. But at the beginning, the challenging part of this was to keep realism in the story, to keep all the characters, to keep them interacting with each other constantly, and to keep the reader feeling like they're there, like they're sitting there or they're standing there. Like every situation that Frank goes into, the reader is there. I want them to feel that, and because writing it, I felt it. And it wasn't, I mean, there was things in the book where what I was writing, it had nothing to do with my life or my father or my mother, but just like you said, situations that he got himself into. Writing it, I felt like I was there. And the more I felt like I was there, the more I put into that certain situation and those pages. And it flowed, and it got better and better.
Mhm. Brilliant. Wow. I wish I had the talent to do that. I mean, that's great to hear, Mark. I mean, just having it flow like that because you're into it, and so that your readers will also be into it. It's great. I mean, what do you hope that your readers then will remember most about Owned by the Streets after finishing the book?
I would say family relationships, self-respect as for and respect for others. Maybe there's still people out there that shake hands with somebody and there's trust. So there's trust, there's loyalty. Um, and the biggest thing is, I would say emotional conflict. We all have them. We all have them in life. And if anybody says that, no, I never had them, then they're lying because people have emotional conflicts. It could be when they're kids, it could be when they're teenagers, it could be when they get married or get to whatever the case may be. So I would say all of them, and like I said, emotional conflict where you have to sit down and weigh out all your options and try to take the best road that you could.
Mm. Yeah, I thought you might say something like that because you mentioned that earlier on, right? So we're talking about that actually just sitting down, weighing up your options, as you say, don't run into things, don't make snap judgments, think about where you're going and the outcomes, right, of what you're going to do next.
Correct. That's correct. So it does stem to what I said before.
Yeah, yeah. So, oh, brilliant. Well, listen, Mo, it's typical. We're running out of time. It's always the way. I can see the book in my head. It just sounds so great. But listen,
Thank you.
where does Frank Gevono go from here, though? Tell us more. I think you've already hinted, haven't you?
He I can't say too much. But book two is in the making. And he needs to get back in the game because what happened at the end of book one really took a hold on him. It really, I should say, took a toll on him. He is down and out, and he's losing his grip. He's losing his grit, his aggressiveness. He's slowly losing it, and he's got to get that back, and he does, and it gets more interesting. I'm going to still keep the concept of family and loyalty and trust, That's all going to still be there, but there's going to be more action in book two.
Mm. Oh, wow. I can see a trilogy at least coming along there then.
I would, I would like to do a 3-book series. I know I could do two, but I don't know about three. That's kind of pushing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Let's hope so, Mark, right? So I hope.
Yes, yes.
Fantastic. Well, listen, that's it. We're out of time now. But Mark Sacco, it has been absolutely wonderful to meet you and to talk to you about Owned by the Streets, which sounds like a great book if you really wanted to go back in time to 1950s New York and all the mafia scene and just the way that people were as opposed to how they are now or how they were 10, 20 years ago even. The golden age we were talking about earlier on. So I think it's a wonderful book, and do you know what? I can't wait to see the movie or the TV series. Maybe you never know, right?
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, listen, if you want to know about the Italian mafia during the 1950s from someone who was in that kind of area, not necessarily the mafia, right, or Mark, but in the area, growing up where that was happening, kind of thing in Hoboken, then or Hoboken, I should say, then yeah. Then take a read of the book, Owned by the Streets. It's available on Amazon, I guess, and all the other retailers.
Yes,
Yeah, fantastic. And do you have a website that you want to tell anyone about?
that's being in the making.
So keep an eye out for that, listeners and viewers. Okay, well, brilliant. Mark Sacco, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and been an absolute pleasure to talk about Owned by the Streets. So I hope that we speak of it again when book 2 comes out. And in the meantime, wow, good luck with it and good luck with everything else as well. It's been lovely to meet you.
Chris, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And we will talk soon. Probably, I think we'll talk again before book two.
Mm, good. Sounds like a plan to me. Mark
Thank
Sacco,
you so much, Chris. I
thank you.
appreciate it. I'm happy to meet you.
And me as well. No, not meet me, but you. Right. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.
If you enjoyed this conversation, you can watch more author conversations here.